Hello everyone, welcome to the essay elections video for the spring 2023 election cycle. I am Brianna Jones and I am this semester's elections coordinator, and this video is going to walk you through everything from declaring you want to run all the way through the campaigning and the voting process. This video is going to discuss a lot of important information about running in the spring 2023 election cycle. First, we're going to start off with what positions are even open, and then we'll go into the differences between those positions. Then we'll touch on the requirements for becoming a candidate, as well as the campaigning period, and then we'll go on to election violations, so what you can and can't do during this election, and lastly we'll talk about voting, which is how we make sure the voices of all you, our students, are heard. So, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing to talk about is who is even allowed to run in the spring 2023 election cycle. So, the classes that are allowed to run are the classes of 2024, 2025, and 2026. You guys are all allowed to run. Sadly, the class of 2023 is not allowed to run for the spring election cycle. Okay, so now for the fun stuff. What positions are open for the spring 2023 election cycle? So, to begin with, President and Vice Presidency are open for the spring 2023 election cycle. Okay, let's get into the differences between the positions we just discussed. So the president and vice president, you both are in charge of the executive branch and the cabinet, and your main job is to work with the other branches of SA and administration to promote positive change for the students of the university. Senate, you're involved in creating legislation that makes the lives of the students better, but you are not involved in programming for any of the classes. That is solely the responsibility of class council. In class council, you're in charge of involving classes through programming, but you are not involved in writing or passing legislation because that's Senate. However, you are allowed to run for as many of these positions as you want, so you can run for 3, you can run for 2, or you can run for 1 position. Now that we've gone over all the different positions, let's talk about how to sign up. So there's 2 main things that need to be done in order to become an official candidate. The first is an elections rules quiz. This is a quiz that's going to ask you a few questions about the election cycle, the rules, and some of the deadlines. In order to pass the quiz, you have to get 100%, but I've worked to make the quiz pretty easy, so no one should have a problem passing it. Once you complete the quiz, you will then be given a link to the candidacy form where you'll put your platform, picture, your name, and that gets you officially listed as a candidate. These are both due on March 24th at noon Eastern Standard Time. And then, after this, I will place your campaign profile, which is your platform, your CCC picture, and your name on the website, and that is all going to go live on March 24th. Okay, so now that you're officially a candidate, let's talk about the campaigning period. The campaigning period is the period that you can publicly advertise your candidacy to the voters. This can be done through online or in-person advertising. So the campaigning period starts on March 25th at 12 p.m. and you may notice that this is a full day after you turn in your candidacy forms. However, you cannot campaign before the period starts, and if you do, you will receive penalty points, and that will put you at a disadvantage in the election. The campaigning period does close on April 4th at 11:59 p.m., which is also when voting closes, and then you'll have a period of time to remove all your campaign materials. Now for types of campaigning. So, the main 2 types are in-person campaigning and online campaigning. So for in-person campaigning, that includes flyers in the buildings, chalk on the sidewalks, and talking to people about your campaign. Online campaigning entails online flyers or posters, online direct messaging, and websites. Now, pretty much all the campaigning you'll be doing will fit into these two categories, but these two categories are not the only types of campaign you're limited to, as long as it falls within the election rules. Now, for campaigning limitations. For in-person limitations, there is no knocking on doors or placing unrequested flyers on doors. There's also no defacing of flyers of other candidates or harassing other candidates, and you can never have any discriminatory messaging. We have a zero tolerance policy, and you will be automatically suspended from participating in SA government elections. For online limitations, you cannot campaign to the official class group pages, and you can only DM people who follow you back. However, you are allowed to campaign in group chats, and actually, we encourage it. And in these group chats, not everyone has to follow you back, but the campaigning that you do has to fall within the rules of the specific Discord server or group chat that you are campaigning in. If you break any of these limitations, you will receive a penalty point that could disqualify you from the election cycle. Now, some other things that are not allowed. Spending more than $40 on campaigning, and then $100 for presidential campaigns. So, if you're running for president and another position, you are still only allowed to spend at most $100. That total does not change whether you're running for only one position or more than one. And if you're running for more than one class council or senate or any of those positions, you are still only allowed to spend $40 on campaigning. You also are not allowed to publicize or announce candidacy before the campaign period starts. This includes doing any sort of campaigning prior to the start of the campaign period that we went over previously. Quid pro quo is also not allowed, so no favors in exchange for votes. Now, the candidate in question will be held responsible for any disallowed actions conducted by helpers assisting campaign, so make sure that anyone that is helping you on your campaign is aware of these rules, because their ignorance is not an excuse for them breaking a rule. Now, let's talk about what to do if you notice that a candidate is breaking a rule that we talked about. So, you want to head over and you want to fill out the elections violation form, which there will be a link on the website for it, and what that's going to do is that's going to notify the elections committee that there is someone that is breaking a rule. And on that form, you just put a few pictures of what you've noticed, and it's going to ask you just to type out a little bit about what the situation was and what rule was being broken. And then you and the candidate in question will be notified if any action is taken. Also, please consult the website for a full list of what is or is not allowed. And if you have a question of if what you're doing is allowed or not, feel free to shoot me an email. I will put my email at the end of this video, and you will see it on the last slide. So, let's talk about voting. Voting starts on April 3rd at 10 a.m. and ends on April 4th at 11:59 p.m. And here we do affirmative voting. What affirmative voting means is that voters are allowed to choose more than one candidate to vote for, and every single one of their votes will receive equal weight. So, for example, if a voter chooses to vote for every single candidate, it'll essentially be as if none of the candidates got a vote. How will voting happen? A link will be emailed to all eligible voting students that leads to the ballot. Then, there will also be voting stations at designated times in Hearst Lounge throughout the 2 days. Check CCC to see when those times will be. Who is allowed to vote? Classes can only vote for their own class council and senate candidates, but all undergraduates can vote for president and vice presidential candidates, including the class of 2023. Now, I know I just gave you a lot of information, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me at sa_elections@u.rochester.edu, and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. Also, feel free to hop over to the SA government website under the elections tab, and there will be more information over there. And happy campaigning.